wow, hi. It's so good to see all of you. Just a couple notes before we have our first group come up. Unfortunately, I could not get it together enough to have a projector. So if you're someone presenting scholarly work and you had slides, I'm sorry about that. But I am still really excited to hear you share about your scholarly work. So the way that this is going to work is we're going to have all three people from your group come up. I did my best to organize each group by like theme or topic. They might not be as related as I am hoping that they are, but hopefully we can find some threads that connect the readers who are joining us on stage as a group. After each reader speaks, we will have a 10-minute Q&A, and then the next group will come up. I will be sitting right here. I'll give you a little signal when you are close to your 7 minutes. You don't have to take the entire 7 minutes if you don't want to, but please feel free to if you are a reader. So our first group is on disorderly eating. We are going to have Marcus Banyan read Wrestling Against Principalities. Gazide Ertuk read A Delicious Vespa Crabo. Please excuse me if I'm mispronouncing it. Molly Seibold and reading an untitled work. Okay, let's welcome them to the stage. You will have to share the microphone, so we're going to pass it. I'm going to give you the microphone first.
So hi, my name's Marcus, and I wrote Writing About Principalities. It's a short story about a wrestler who will do anything to win, and that involves cutting large amounts of weight and also binge eating in the off season to gain weight and gain muscle. So the story starts with him in the wrestling part for third place, and he ends up winning, but it's only third place. So I'll start with this part. Barry Dover and Guy Valenti were the only wrestlers who placed in the state championship, with Guy winning the championship 3 years in a row. However, 2 sophomores and 1 other junior had placed in the regional tournament and qualified to be at the state level. Guy walked up to him. He was a junior like Barry, but somehow more skilled. He didn't even need to cut weight like Barry. He was effortlessly strong at his natural weight and had an impeccable technique. He was also the team captain and Barry's practice partner. "You'll get a shot at the championship next year," asserted Guy, ruffling Barry's hair in a patronizing manner, "but good job today. We're all proud." He looked around at his teammates. The bigger ones were smiling and laughing to themselves, and the smaller ones were eyeing Barry with envy, their hungry expressions devouring Barry's elation at achieving third place. It wasn't gold, but his name would still be on the banner in the gym, his name forever in permanent glory. As they stared, Barry recognized something within himself. He had only eaten a banana after weigh-in, so he had had energy for the championship. Full meals weren't a good idea, as his coach encouraged little food before matches to avoid nausea. Barry was hungry, and the hunger was unlike any other hunger he had ever experienced. The hunger, however, was combined with a sense of relief, as he now didn't have to weigh in for 8 months. That's it.
Thank you, Marcus.
Hi, I'm Guzide, and I'm going to read a short story called A Delicious Vespa Crabo. I will read first 4 or 5 pages. A delicious Vespa Crabo. I am thankful for the Vespa Crabo I ate last month. After the giant vesp began to build a nest inside my stomach, everything started to flow smoothly. While I mixed my autumn squash soup, I stared at the picnic table. Ketchup, mayonnaise, onion rings, French fries, Impossible Burger, and Coke. The frozen chocolate pie was thawing in the corner, unopened. The smell reminded me of my hunger. The soup was still hot. Its steam brushed my cheeks. "I can't wait," said Mariam, and she took a huge bite of her burger. Before swallowing it, she put one French fry in her mouth and began chewing both. Slowly, she took a sip of her Coke. When her mouth was empty, she dipped an onion ring in the ketchup and swallowed it whole, going straight down her throat. She was having fun. However, she paused for a moment and frowned. After murmuring a couple of words about her evil manager, she took another bite of the burger and started the whole procedure over again. I gripped my plastic spoon and took one scoop of my soup. The taste was familiar. In the early morning, I had a kefir smoothie with cherries and cinnamon. I felt a strange discomfort inside me. I had sworn to myself that for a month I wouldn't eat more than 2 meals a day, and I had dropped to 122 pounds. Actually, it was 122 pounds when I woke up this morning. It had been 125 pounds in the evening before. I wasn't sure which one was correct. Perhaps it's better to count it as 125. I shouldn't ignore even a half pound extra. The worst part is that I broke my vow this morning by adding a banana to my smoothie. When you allow a small break in this kind of habit, it never seals over again, and the cracks you allow yourself lead to an avalanche. You add a salad next to your soup, a slice of cheese on top of your rice cake, and a couple of almonds next to your black coffee. Your stomach becomes a hole, and then it's impossible to fill it with any amount of food. You start to add caramel to your oat milk latte. The boiled eggs turned into a garden omelette. I heard the buzz of the swarm. They might be in the bushes, but I couldn't see them. I couldn't forgive myself for the mistake of the banana that morning. The wasp got angry and moved around in its nest. He wouldn't sting me for that. I held my stomach. I had a silent agreement with him. I don't eat what he doesn't like, and in return, he doesn't sting me. Normally, I'd eat a rice cake with my soup, but because of the banana, I didn't. If I were to allow myself one rice cake now while chit-chatting with Mariam, my hunger wouldn't hurt so much, and I wouldn't be counting her bites. I should have cancelled the picnic. I wasn't feeling well. I'd rather be at home by myself. "Why don't you eat?" she asked, as if she had heard my inner thoughts. "You are thin enough. Look at yourself. You don't need to lose more." She rambled on. There was no way to stop her. "Don't worry about it. I can see that it's going to be an obsession, and you..." The buzz became louder, and the Vespa moved anxiously inside me. He might be calling them. "I'm not worried," I said. "I used to eat that way. I can live like that for the rest of my life." I looked into her eyes and smiled. "I'm used to it, okay? I'm not starving for anything. I don't feel hungry at all. Even if I wanted food, the wasp would consume the hunger immediately. I don't prefer to feed my desire. My stomach became smaller, a useless empty bag of nothingness, a calm and peaceful nest for a quiet Vespa. I had another spoonful of my soup. Then I began mixing it slowly with my spoon and was about to have another one. But some bubbles started popping up on the surface. I looked at Mariam and said, "Something's wrong with my eyes." I blinked my eyes a couple of times and looked at the soup again. Inside the bubbles, I saw tiny black hairs. I leaned toward my plate. It wasn't hair. They were tiny black legs of another wasp. It was trying to save itself from the soup, wriggling inside it. As it sank deeper, its frustration and rage became unbearable. Its vibrating tail sent ripples across the soup. The buzz filled my ears. I couldn't hear anything except the vibration. The Vespa crabro inside me woke up from his nap and started to climb my throat. He wanted to get out of my stomach and help his dying friend. It had happened before. For other reasons, he tried to climb up my throat and I ended up vomiting. He was never able to climb the hallway and never reach my mouth. I turned my eyes to Mariam, and she was also looking at me with confusion. Her lips were moving, yet I couldn't hear even a word. In panic, I got up and threw all the soup on the grass. The pressure on my ears and the movements of Vespa Crabro made me feel dizzy. My hands were shaking and I began to sweat. I said in a hurry, "I need to go, I am sorry, Mariam." Mariam's mouth was wide open. I noticed the chocolate drop at the edge of her lip. She was eating her favorite frozen chocolate pie. I knew she'd never forget what she had seen. My madness. I had ruined her day. While I was leaving, I said, "I'll call you later and explain everything, I promise, but I don't feel good right now." Her lips kept moving, however, I couldn't hear anything. She was trying to give me some French fries. Thank you.
Hello. I don't know how far to hold the microphone. I don't particularly usually talk. So, not a creative writing girly. I am trying my best, but because this is kind of a class that I think touches on a lot of stuff that, I don't know, we all feel very personally, I wanted to do something a little creative. It's not done, so be nice, but this is called The Closing Shift. Most cashiers won't admit it, but we do judge what's in your basket. Or maybe I'm just projecting. Maybe I'd think differently if the AC didn't break on my bus ride over, if the muggy summer air didn't coat my body like a second set of skin, transforming my limbs into slick, fleshy protuberances sloshing around the smooth blue plastic seat. If I hadn't felt the beads of sweat running in languid streams down my calves from the crooks of my knees. Maybe if I didn't feel the waistband of my jeans, fortified with this rows of belt-loop teeth digging into my stomach as I waited for my stop, I'd think differently. Maybe. 12:13 p.m. The sign in the break room was simple. Enjoy the donuts. Yet panic welled in the pit of my stomach at the sight of the pink boxes splayed out across the table in varying states of emptiness. Against my better judgment, I fixed my gaze on the spiky ridges of bear claws, the deep amber forest of maple bars, and the snowy coating of sugar crystals icing the plats of brioche twists. I couldn't fight it. The prickle that bloomed in my stomach. Desire. Powdered sugar with lemon curd. That's the one I'd let myself eat if I could. I hated myself for the hunger, for the burning urge to sink my teeth into the pillowy soft dough, to feel the tart bite of citrus zip across my tongue. One of my coworkers brushed past me to a cake donut with pink sprinkles. The thick chocolate icing clung to his fingers like tar, and I watched as his nicotine-stained teeth broke the dry crust, coating the dense pastry. He flashed me a smile, but all I saw was the dark sludge adhering itself to his gums like periodontal rot. Crumbs cascaded down his shirt and clung like ants to the curly red hairs of his beard. I stood firm in my decision. I shoved my hunger down and walked away. 2:05 p.m. The customer was a wall of army green, a rotund mass of sweat-stained cotton that lumbered towards my register with a full basket. Love handles undulated under the fabric of a stretched-out shirt, catching the thoroughbred material in their hungry folds. His long, greasy hair was partially hidden by a baseball cap, but there was nothing he could do to hide his ruddy cheeks, flushed despite the air conditioning blasting out of the vents above us. Stubble formed a thorny ring around his lips, while his mouth hung open like a cave entrance, revealing crooked stalagmites, plaque-ridden teeth. My breath hitched as he threw a pre-wrapped turkey sandwich onto the countertop, the first item in a landslide of loose bags of chips, candy, single-serve cookies. Picking up the box, I tried to ignore the way the mayo adhered the bread to the roof of the plastic clamshell like glue. The cold cuts matched his complexion. His hairy forearms ended in meaty hands, which flung containers of raw chicken and steak in my direction. The meat was cold under the veil of plastic wrap. My fingers dug into the smooth surface of a chicken breast, nibbling the pink, skinless cutlet. I was stacking packages of steak marbled with thick bands of fat, my stomach turning at the idea of it rendering, charring into a brown gloop on the gritty surface of a cast-iron pan. Picking up a slab of pork, he pointed a calloused finger at the bright yellow sticker advertising 50% off. The meat looked gray under the harsh light of the store's fluorescence. Then I felt something wet. Juice leaked out of one of the containers, leaving a pink viscous stain on the white countertop. I rubbed my fingers together, trying to ignore the tacky residue of raw meat coating my hands as I placed the cellophane breasts, thighs, and loins in a brown paper bag. $65.77. He dug into his pockets and threw two crinkled bills my way. A line of dirt caked the skin under his chipped fingernails. Laying out his change, I was careful to avoid touching the fleshy plant of his outstretched hand. It was barely human. 3:24 p.m. 3 generations of women stood before me like characters in a funhouse mirror. 3 stages of life wrapped in pink polyester yoga pants and creamy lycra jackets. The eldest 2 had unzipped theirs to show off matching silicone breasts. The youngest, probably no more than 4, stared at me with an upturned nose from her high perch in the cart seat. Without breaking conversation, they carelessly began to unload. We can't go to Bend that weekend. We already committed to Aspen, but she won't change her bachelorette party, even though she knows it's Parker's 5th birthday. I didn't have time to move the loaf of bread they'd haphazardly tossed aside before the eldest one lugged a bag of oranges on top of it. She'd probably been beautiful once, but now her face was pulled in 6 directions, full lips and cheeks tugging at her skeleton like a Halloween mask. Foundation failed to cover the age spots peppering her neck. Her daughter's manicured hands threw a $50 box of women's probiotics on the counter like it was nothing. It probably was nothing to her, just like the plastic bags of string cheese, the 3 gallons of whole milk, and the partially open yogurt pouches oozing with the lukewarm blueberry pus. There would always be shopping trips for these kinds of women. So, wrapped in their conversation, they didn't bother to check their eggs or replace the bananas that were already bruising from their position under a mountain of cereal boxes and wine bottles. I kept my gaze down, pressing my lips into a thin line so not even the thought of food could pass through the barred gates of my teeth. My tongue paced back and forth across my incisors like a guard dog. The woman in the middle was probably a few years older than me. She dug into a purse worth more than my monthly salary, smacking her gum in a veneered grin. Her eyes were utterly vacant. I pitied her and the small patch of stomach fat her mommy makeover had failed to cut away. If this was wealth, I didn't want it. 5:05. She was young, beautiful, perfect. Everything I wasn't. Her brown hair tumbled down her back in elegant curls. Her skin glowed, poreless cheeks kissed with blush. I wanted to swim in her round blue eyes and sleep in the nest of long black lashes when I grew tired. I wanted to be her. I wanted to open her up and live her life. To place my hand on my chest and feel her delicate collarbones, so angular they could catch rainwater. To reach a hand into my purse and discover, upon its removal, that my chubby joints had been transformed into slight little wrists. I wanted a dancer's poise with slender legs that made every movement rhythmic and enticing. I wanted to feel thighs that didn't touch. I wanted to see the knots of my spine poke out from under my skin as I bent to put away my shopping basket. I reached up to my mouth and wanted to feel her plump lips and slim jawline before sipping the alkaline water she intended to purchase. Her slight chest made her ageless, a figure out of time. Her skirt lung low on her hip bones, revealing the sculpted parallel lines of abs. I didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until her eyes fluttered up to mine, confused. I didn't want to contaminate her. I didn't want the corpulent rolls bulging against my company apron to spread across the table and threaten her bird-like form. And I could feel the way my thighs brushed together, 2 mounds of cellulite smashing like tectonic plates. She flashed me a smile, and I wanted to die. 7:26. My head throbbed from the tension of grinding my own teeth together. Every spasm of a muscle in my lower jaw satisfied the need to move, to burn, to pace. Pain splintered up from the base of my stomach. My head spun back and the room lights blurred above me. Static rang in my ears. When I looked down, my hands were covered in evidence. White powdered sugar. Half the donut sat on a paper plate before me. The lemon curd looked like fat pulled from a liposuction bag. The overhead light hugged each dimple in the gluttonous slurry. It was inside me. My throat felt like an oil slick and I needed to get it out. Could I even get it all out? Would it retain its filmy yellow shape or slide up my esophagus in a beige clump? This was what weakness cost me, and I needed to fix it. 7:42. I wanted to be her, but I'd sinned. Now I was on my knees paying homage to a fragile, delicate, beautifully wounded saint. The cold tile clung to my knees. I blocked the door with the closed for maintenance sign, but I wasn't alone. I could feel her slender hand on my shoulder, giving me a comforting squeeze as I raised my fingers to my mouth and made everything right.
We now have 10 minutes for Q&A. If you would like to ask any of these writers a question, please feel free.
Not all at once, people.
I have a question. I think something that, I'm afraid that it's going to be too broad, so I'm trying to figure out how to make it more narrow. But I'm very curious about how each of you have, it's about like hunger, but there's a lot of attention spent to like describing the body. I'm interested in your approaches to like why you like why you've described the body in the ways you have, or like what your thought process is and engaging with and sort of creating the body in your text. I can try and make that more specific. I know that's
No, I think I get it. So mine was really based on personal experience as a wrestler, and the stuff my teammates went through. And I think when I think about wrestling, I think of building the body up to break it down. And I really thought of the Roxane Gay and Bordeaux piece when talking about the theory behind it. It's kind of control of the body and just being in control of the body. So that's kind of what I thought.
Okay. I also, all the readings we had, I think, influenced my thinking about the body and eating disorder. I also really like the Bordeaux's article, especially about the anorectic bodies. They have some hallucinations and they think that they have something inside of their stomach. And the most effective thing about that was it was always male who was talking inside of their stomach. So it was also about the control. And during the class we talk about how the culture shape our thinking. So I only didn't describe the narrator's body, but also the other characters like Mariam. I also influenced from Ed Wood's novel. I took that character to my story and invited there. So I think that two female characters' eating habits and how they see their bodies influenced me, and I wrote about them.
I wish I had like a really smart answer that would tie in with the reading we had in class, because we had just so many that were obviously like addressing the subject matter. But I think my goal in writing mine was that like I wanted it to feel visceral, and I wanted you to be able to feel it in your own body and just see how when someone's in that mindset, just like everything is warped. We're just normal people. Buying groceries could just become like something monstrous. So.
Are you sure you're not a creative writer?
You over there?
Yes. This question for Ms. Doppelfeld, longtime fan, first time caller. My question, I was interested in the part where the focus on the three women at the shop becomes not on what they're consuming food-wise, but their other consumption habits and material consumption habits. And I was curious what connection you saw between that type of consumption and then the other food types of consumption that your narrator is tracking throughout the story.
That's a really good question. Honestly, I'll be so for real. I was just describing people at work. Like, I work in like Oswego. I get all sorts of fun and interesting characters. But no, I mean, like it. When you are like walking around, like you advertise yourself a certain way, and like the habits of your consumption are kind of put on display whether you want them to be or not. I know that doesn't answer your question, but
Can I have a follow-up?
no.
I'm curious because like your narrator's kind of reading the different customers as they come in. Would you consider the way the narrator is approaching the customers as that phenomenon of maladaptive reading that Valentine, thank you, talks about in Antarctica?
Kind of, because it's not something like where I don't believe that Valentine, that maladaptive reading is something you actively do when you see a person in a body that makes you feel uncomfortable, even if it's completely normal. It's more like what I wrote would probably be great for someone who wanted to conduct a maladaptive reading, because it just touches on every little bit of like dark monstrosity, I think, that makes that kind of just like a car crash you can't look away from. So that would be my response.
I know it might be cheating for me to ask a question, but first of all, I'd like to say all three of your pieces. Stunning. Beautiful. I was thinking about Darren's presentation on body horror when you were reading, but this question I want to pose to all three of you. I'm wondering what possession, because that was kind of the theme that I saw in all three, how possession is related to disorderly eating in your pieces. I saw the possession like to be possessed by the wasp in her stomach. And I saw it in your pieces as well. I was thinking about, Molly, your presentation on the desire to possess a woman, not in like a patriarchal way, but in the way that like you desire to be her. And I saw that in your piece. So how does possession show up in your pieces?
So mine kind of gets crazy later on. It was 20 pages, a little over 20 pages when I wrote it, so I couldn't share the whole what I had. But basically later on he messes with a Ouija board and has a dream about a corpse demon in his sleep that helps him win the championship. So that sort of becomes the part of Gothic horror that was in my piece. It was he ends up sort of becoming like the corpse monster at the end. And I really thought of possession when I thought of that, just him literally becoming possessed by a corpse monster. But yeah.
I think the relationship between the Vespa Crabro and the narrator is the main idea for the story. And after what happened, she starts to see everything as a wasp, because she tries to not eat that food. So it becomes, the wasps began to call his swarm, and she starts to see them everywhere. I think it's all about that patriarchy, and after that picnic scene, there's a flashback about how she first met with that Vespa Crabro when she was a child, and affected her thinking about her body or for the world. So I think Vespa Crabro becomes the monster in my story, but they have a weird relationship. So she loves it, but also she hates it from him too.
Maddie, I think you clocked me really well. It was probably directly from there, but it also comes from kind of like a personal experience where I think when I was kind of having the worst sort of body image portion of my life, it was very much like I wouldn't see people. I would be walking through the hall in school and it'd be like her collarbones, her legs, I like how her hair looks, and just piecing together and like taking different pieces of people. And I don't think that that's a very unique experience. At least I hope it isn't. But I do think that kind of just, we're incentivized to do that. Like, just, you can't create a person like naturally. It has to be sort of, you can't like find a person like that naturally. It has to be constructed. So I think it was just kind of mimicking that sort of. My therapist is gonna love this.
I think that we are out of time for questions. Can we give them
For anyone who's just arrived, there's food, drink, wine in the back. Please help yourself.
I would also love to encourage you, if you were not able to find a seat, please go sit on the stairs, make yourselves comfortable. I know that standing for long periods of time can be a little uncomfortable, and I'd love for you all to stay as long as possible. So please take a minute to go sit on the stairs if that feels. Would you like to go sit on the stairs? Please come through.
I'm trying to find the path, and I don't.
This is all.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Good evening, I should say. What I'm going to share today is just kind of like a opening, like introduction to a little bit of what I'm going to be writing about, which is a novel called Nervous Conditions, and doing what is called a Gothic reading of it, which I'll describe in my writing, but my final project is essentially going to be a research paper on this book and thinking about the post-colonial anorexia and how it all relates to the Gothic. All right. Haunted castles, the supernatural, demons and crypts, ghosts and ghouls. At its face value, one would assume that none of these Gothic tropes are in Tsitsi Dongaremga's nervous conditions. Yet, as I'm going to argue, they are, or at least some of them. In literary scholarship, the Gothic has moved beyond the limits of genre and has been transformed into a mode of reading, like such examples as like Marxism or post-structuralism as like a way of thinking or about texts. As this scholar Heather Ballantyne argues in her dissertation, The Anorexic Gothic, to read via the Gothic is to be analyzing the fictionally, and this is her words, analyzing the fictionally depicted breakdown of categories and boundaries in order to expose those broader structures of power and thought that are systems. I won't be arguing that Nervous Conditions is a Gothic text per se. Rather, my goal is to be observing its Gothic qualities so that I might analyze the structures of power in the text and the way in which it breaks down categories and boundaries. I will focus my presentation tonight on arguing the Gothic qualities in Nervous Conditions, although my essay itself will go beyond this analysis and into questions of colonial power and native resistance and their intersections in anorexia. A concept which we've discussed in our class is the uncanny. In its original German formulation by Sigmund Freud, the uncanny is called unheimlich. Maybe that's not the correct pronunciation, but it's mine. Which is like a feeling of unhomeliness. It is a transformation of the familiar into the unfamiliar, or as scholar Julia Obert paraphrases from Freud, the uncanny is that which is intimate yet strange, that which oscillates between, on the one hand, the congenial and homelike, and on the other, the uneasy, hidden and dangerous. The feeling of the uncanny is often invoked in Gothic texts, and it is a feeling which I would argue defines much of Nervous Conditions. For the character Nyasha, the protagonist's cousin, who spent part of her childhood in Britain before moving back to Zimbabwe as a teenager, what she experiences is this uncanny feeling of at once being home in her mother country but not really recognizing it, seeing it at times as dangerous. Tambu, the protagonist, has a similar experience when she returns home after living with her uncle in the city and finds it to look different than how she initially remembers it. She comes home and she finds everything to be more dirty specifically. This feeling of the uncanny is, I will argue, a result of the colonization of the mind for the characters. In adopting the Western education and cultural attitudes, the characters begin to view their homeland as unfamiliar and different. This results in a blurring of boundaries between the colonized and the colonizer. As Janice Hill argues in her essay, Purging a Plateful of Colonial History, quote, when Baba Makuru, the patriarch of this whole family, insists that the family mimic his westernized beliefs, in effect, he colonizes them. Baba Makuru, a colonized subject himself, who goes to Britain and gets a master's degree, takes on the role of the colonizers and subjects his family to indoctrination in a lot of methods. From a Gothic perspective, it could arguably be read that Baba Makuru plays the role of a domineering lord of his sort of castle or mansion. I wrote down a Dracula-like figure, but I haven't read Dracula, so if the Dracula heads in the crowd don't correct me. just trust me on that one. Ballantyne finds anorexia and the Gothic to be inextricably linked, as the title of her thesis would suggest, The Anorexic Gothic. As she puts it herself, on the one hand, the cadaverous anorexic body has been constructed as a Gothic figure capable of inspiring horror and fascination in its spectators. On the other hand, the anorexic experience appears to be shaped by a Gothic sense of horror
and displacement, and that it situates the anorexic subject as the victim of invading forces, which may take the shape of illness or recovery. The character Nyasha, then, who develops bulimia in the text, embodies the Gothic for the readers as well as the other characters in the text, and her experience with bulimia is Gothic in itself, as well as being a reaction to the imperial Gothic structure that is pushed on her. This structure isn't merely created through educational assimilation, but is dictated by space and the colonial world itself. Indeed, in her essay, The Architectural Uncanny, Julia Ober argues that colonial capitals have often been made into a bastardized mirror images of their metropolitan centers by a way of radically revised architecture, ecology, and even agriculture. They can literally reshape and redirect lived experience and can therefore make familiar space seem uncannily foreign. Despite Baba Makuru still residing in Zimbabwe, the urban area they inhabit, down to the very building the family dwells in, which is like a style of a colonial building. It has like white walls, like a white painted outside. It's like all over, like, I don't know, I think of like a lot of buildings in Maine. That's a reference that not many people get, except for Rizzo. It's like an uncannily foreign space that Tambu, the protagonist, finds herself entering. She's at once still in her motherland and is seeing it terraformed into a reflection of Britain. And so in character, setting, and plot points, we find the Gothic present in this text. It is shocking to me that a reading of Nervous Conditions in relation to the Gothic hasn't been performed before, to my knowledge. I believe that in reading it in this light, we will be able to approach the way in which power functions in the text, as well as the effectiveness of resistance by the women characters, from Nyasha to Tambu's mother. While I'm not able to fully explore such thoughts in this presentation, I hope that what I've argued here will encourage you to see the text in a new light that you perhaps haven't seen it before, or maybe in the lack of light that it might be haunting in. Thank you.
Okay, hi. My draft is kind of a mess right now, so I'm going to start off by prefacing the close reading that I'm going to read with some questions that I'm kind of considering as I write my paper. So the first question is, what do subjects anticipate getting out of foregoing like a cultivation of interiority? And then my second question is, what happens when wounds remain open? And I'm thinking about the epigraph. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm thinking about the epigraph to The Queer Art of Failure, which is a quote by Jamaica Kincaid, where she states, for those who have lost are never hardened to their loss. They feel it deeply, always into eternity. And so the close reading that I'm going to be doing is from the novel The Vegetarian by Han Kang. And, okay, in the beginning of the novel, Young Hye, who's the protagonist in The Vegetarian, her interior state is translated as consonant self-narration, with her italicized thoughts interrupting the prose. In part 1, The Vegetarian, her husband, Mr. Chong, gets upset with her for being squeamish while mincing meat. In response to his explosive behavior, Young Hye thinks, "Why didn't this agitate me like it should have done? Instead, I became even calmer. A cool hand on my forehead. Suddenly, everything around me began to slide away, as though pulled back on an ebbing tide. The dining table, you, all the kitchen furniture, I was alone, the only thing remaining in all of infinite space." The feeling of withdrawal for Young Hye is likened to a wave. She feels her singularity at this moment. Simultaneously, she loses her personhood. She becomes the only thing. Touch is present for Young Hye in this moment. Her calmness becomes a cool hand. This touch does not serve the purpose of comforting Young Hye, but rather opens up a cavern in which her unraveling can occur. This moment predates her refusal of meat. Rather than interpreting the emission of Young Hye's consciousness as her lacking agency or depth, it may be useful to consider what it could mean to exist in a state of exposure. Michael Marder, in his book, The Chernobyl Herbarium, describes the fallout of radiation from Chernobyl on humans. He writes, "We were all plants then." He argues that our exposure and vulnerability to this catastrophe came from the fact that radiation is unknowable and untraceable. He writes, "Vegetal life is not merely exposed, it is exposure, exteriority, outwardness. Only in limit circumstances can we experience on our very skin what vegetal being exposed, or generally speaking being X, implies." Marder argues that plants have no interiority, but rather than subordinating plants to humans, he argues that humans are actually limited in our abilities to exist in the state of outwardness that plants do. Plants' exposure to the world allows for them to learn from and give back to the world in a way that humans, if we don't remain open and outward, might not be. In The Vegetarian, the concept of remaining open is framed in terms of fleshiness, and softness is explored in the novel through the focus on Young Hye's desire to not wear a bra. And then I start to go into a different close reading. So that's all I have for now.
I also don't have like a very polished reading for today. I guess just real briefly, I've been wanting to talk about my family history. My great-grandparents were rescued from the death marches in Armenia in 1915 and were able to survive the genocide at that time and moved to the United States and had children, and they had children, and the journey they had as people coming from that situation to the United States and all of the hardships that they went through there and here, I believe led to a lot of really really dark and really dysfunctional patterns and behaviors in our family, and one of those was like a eating disorder that was passed down generationally. So as we've been going through this coursework, I've been thinking about all of this, and I have I'm trying to write a sort of hybrid theoretical / auto fiction piece talking about this and relating generational trauma and genocide to eating disorders, and also the just wanting to destroy the body. I kind of think of that as finishing the job, especially for survivors. And so so I'll just read my footnotes because I didn't have time to get the autofiction part to a place that I would be willing to read it. Okay, so I call this section "The Culling of the Flock." In 1939, a week before the German invasion of Poland, Nazi leader Adolf Hitler concluded his Obersalzberg speech with the command to relentlessly and without compassion exterminate all people of Polish origin, assuring his audience by famously stating, "Who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians?" This was, of course, in reference to the Armenian genocide of 1915. From 1894 to 1896, the Ottoman Empire began their slaughter of the Armenians to suppress their demands for civil rights. By the end of 1915, 1 million Armenian men, women, and children had been murdered. In the 19th century, the pastoral region of Sveli, Georgia, was home to sheep farmers who tended their flocks in the Irasheti Mountains. Historically, sheep farming was Armenia's primary form of agriculture. Sheep and rams were considered sacred. Throughout Eastern Europe, you'll find stone rams with different inscriptions, but some of them are Armenian. And these are statues used as gravestones to honor the dead. These ram-shaped stones represent a conscious alignment with the values of agro-pastoral practices in the face of internationalism in times of radical change and uncertainty. Similarly, The Life and Times of Michael Kay by Coetzee demonstrates that devotion to the land is a kind of resistance against imperialism and colonization. The term culling the flock describes a common practice farmers use to segregate unhealthy sheep from the rest of the fold. One might draw a crude comparison between the practice of culling the flock and the forced removal of Armenians from the Ottoman Empire. And lamb meat as a source of food augments this grotesque comparison to the Armenian genocide and relates back to the overarching themes of hunger, as in bodies who feed bodies. In her book, Dedication to Hunger, Haywood references the silence of the lambs, comparing lambs to women and girls who are sexually oppressed by men. This is a fitting metaphor for Armenian women and children as both sheep farmers and as victims of sexual torture. Quote, starving Armenian women and children were seen throwing themselves on the body of a dead donkey, tearing it to pieces and devouring it. Exhausted people falling on all fours and crawling along like animals, still driven, till they died among the other dead people who strewed the roads, and at last a long train of women and girls naked, driven on and on, end quote, by McCartney. Nervous Conditions by Dengaremga looks at imperialism through the eyes of Tambu and her family. To take possession of land, the colonizer must take possession of the people of that land by burning down their culture, their language, and ultimately their identity. This process describes the Ottoman Empire's systematic purification of Armenian influence, which included the outlawing of the very word Armenia in newspapers, textbooks, and maps. The language and the name of the people were erased. The Ottoman Empire did not want to simply get rid of Armenians. The novel The Vegetarian by Kang describes a dog who is tortured for biting a child. It was believed that the dog must be killed and eaten. The child's father does not merely shoot the dog. Quote, it was said that for the meat to be tender, the dog had to run until it was on the verge of death, then beaten. That was the only way to ensure the meat was effective as a cure, end quote. Similarly, soldiers gouged out the eyes of Armenian men before killing them. The women and children were tortured, raped, and starved to death. Babies were hacked to pieces by bayonets. Quote, Armenian women had lived and gone through the worst experiences and most terrible sufferings. Having no defense nor protection, they were totally vulnerable. They were subjected to rape, sex slavery, and forced marriage. Sexual torture and kidnapping were also common, end quote. And I just wanted to sort of close with a quote from Membe and his Necropolitics. The death of the other, his or her humiliation and abasement, are the very conditions of the survivor's life and sense of security. And I know I don't have time to get into how that relates to eating disorders, but I kind of want to reiterate that I think in cases like these, when a person is reduced to nothing, any survivor of that nothingness is going to see themselves as nothing, and that's kind of part of having an eating disorder, is reducing yourself to that nothingness. So that's the piece I'm working on.
Okay, we have 10 minutes for questions. Please don't be shy.
Yeah, I have a question for Nostalgia. You mentioned that you could read Gothic as like a mode of reading. There are elements in nervous conditions that I think we would call more explicitly Gothic. When we were in class, our professor talked about the Gothic often being superstition or opposed to rational ways of thinking. So there are moments in the book where, like, the mother has her own way of reasoning, and I was wondering like how a reading, like a mode of reading, would include more explicit moments, perhaps, or if you even think that's an explicit moment of Gothic.
That's a really good question. I was thinking about there's a part, like with that, there's a part where she also, actually I forget exactly who, but they kind of claimed the role of being a witch in order to like, upon like, I think it's like when the family is arguing in the house and they like enter into the house and they're like, I'm going to like bewitch you for this, because like the men are kind of just talking about how to like more like effectively like control the women. Someone had like transgressed a boundary and they're just like, anyways, like, and like claiming that one of my thoughts on that is like, there's like two forms of Gothic literature to differentiate here. There's the imperial Gothic literature and there's the post-colonial Gothic literature. And the post-colonial Gothic literature frequently adopts those tropes that are usually imputed onto them as a means of resistance. And so she's taking on this, like, the imperial Gothic of, like, being, like, this bewitching character and sort of subverting it and turning it into her own power in order to sort of subvert the men's discussion on how to control them. So there's, like, interactions with the genre that started out in, like, Europe and how it's... the ways that it's used to be oppressive can be subverted in that way. I think I'm going to keep going in a roundabout way, but I hope that answers. Yeah. Kyle.
I've got a question about your writing method. I'm curious how you navigate scholarship and like close reading and the discourse with your maybe the more personal element and the auto-fictive element in your work. I can see you're kind of working with like resonances between our primary texts and your account of the Armenian genocide, but I'm just curious, like, in that hybrid genre, what's your approach?
Yeah, I've been working with Sarah a little bit and trying to brainstorm like the best way to do this within the confines of our assignment. And I right now what I have is like 5 sections that have different titles. Like the first one being the calling of the flock, where I do have like a couple pages of like a narration of introducing like the Armenian people as sheep farmers, and then some of the like horrors that they experience. And I have some footnotes for all of the sections that are directly related to some of our sources, where then I give kind of what I just read to you and make connections that way. And I follow that pattern throughout the writing, where it's like autofiction or kind of memoir with footnotes, and I'm playing with the idea of like how to put the theoretical writing mixed in with the creative part. Thank you for asking.
I have a follow-up kind of question, or I don't know if it's a question yet, but all of these were amazing, by the way. Just like so cool, so much to think about. It occurred to me that all of them in some ways are about space, even if it's not always obvious. And I'm thinking about, well, one thing I wrote down when I was listening to your talk, Ava, Martyr has that essay, What is Plant Thinking? And I wrote down, what is plant writing? Mm-hmm. So like, what would the literary form of vegetal being be? But then I was so fascinated, Kaya, with the idea that what you were giving us was a footnote with no referent. So I was just picturing this on the page as like a blank page with just a footnote. And then I got thinking about the houses, the kind of haunted houses in nervous conditions, and how I hadn't actually thought of this before, but like what your talk made me think about was how what we get is like this house that's got nothing. Inside of it is nothing, right? A kind of blankness or an empty hole. So I don't know, I'm just like really fascinated by all the like resonances amongst your essay, your presentations. So, any thoughts about that? Maybe that's a green light to just submit a blank page.
Well, I think it's actually I hadn't thought about it that way, but you know, like within my family, like I've had to do a lot of my own research because my family didn't want to talk about it. And there's a book that my great uncle had written that gives an account, but it's a very sugar-coated account. And so anyway, I just think that's interesting, thinking about the fact that like you have history, but maybe like the personal experience is just blank.
This
is for Ava. I think I have a question, but can you just first flesh out a little bit like what you're trying to say between the connection of in the vegetarian, like Yang-He becoming vegetal and interiority, and then what it like means for her humanity, and the specifically like the last 2 thirds of the novel.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking about, I guess I have a lot of questions with the novel of like, how much is her desire to be vegetal? How much is it like her reaching towards a vegetal state, and then how much of it is this kind of like anthropomorphizing what being a plant is and not really like realizing what it actually is. But I was really interested in like the narration and the way that you're always getting her like descriptions of her through other people's perspectives and getting only descriptions of like her body's articulations, which is very vegetal in a way because you're not seeing her interiority unless it's translated through these like dream states. And so that was kind of the connection with the quote about excess and exposure and exteriority. And then I'm trying to tie in this idea of wounds too, and thinking about the way that like there's something about the fact that she's trying to, her response to like traumatic instances is to withdraw, and how like maybe by existing in a state of exposure, those wounds are allowed to be open, and kind of how that changes the experience, and also formally how like having these open wounds in the novel maybe can change the way the novel's read too. But it's all very unfigured out right now.
Rhizomatic.
Yeah. Okay, I suppose I was curious, like, because the novel form is like so interested in interiority, and that's right, that's where the humanity comes through. So like, I guess my question would be something like, what kind of dignity can the novel form like give to someone like Yang-He or even Michael K, whose being is, or who comes across on the page, not very much like through their interiority, but through, like you said, like their bodily movement.
Mm-hmm. Man, I feel like that's a question I should write down and consider more, but I guess I feel like maybe I'm more exploring what I've been thinking about. I like that question, I want to think about it more, but I've been trying to think about like what can we learn from a subject, like how do we kind of get away from the idea of the thinking brain and like and speech as being the only performances of like a subject's self. Like how do we think about touch or posture and like positioning in the novel as like an articulation as well, and like how do we read like the spaces and like the silences as like part of that. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's what we have time for. Can we give them another? stunning. I am kind of in love with all three women on the stage. How would you all feel about taking a 5-minute break before am I mispronouncing it? No. Eating ladies! Yeah, Rizzo. It is eating ladies. A lady eater, if you will. Wow. So our next three speakers are Luke, AG, and Eel. Please come to the stage. We are very excited to hear you read. Luke, I'm going to give you the...
Thanks, Wendy. Okay. First of all, mine has nothing to do with eating women anymore, but I'm so honored to be on this stage. I feel like we all have poetry in common, so...
We're poets.
Yeah.
We're poets.
Okay.
All three of you are poets?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were going to present on your essay. Sorry,
I am
that's great.
not going to present on my essay. I thought about it. So for anyone who doesn't know, my essay is about Edward Cullen from Twilight as like the modern duelist for the YA audience, but I'm not going to talk about that because I actually, I've only written none of the paper. So, yeah. So what I was thinking is I'm going to read a couple poems that I wrote for our poetry workshop, one being for this class kind of specifically, and one being, you really can't tell if you're making any noise because the speakers are facing away. Are we good? We're good. Okay.
You sound great.
Thank you. So I'm going to read, a poem from this class, and then a poem that I wrote about like recontextualizing, that the giving villains good backstories so that like they're not as bad. I wrote an ode from Polyphemus Odyssey Book 9, which I think Eve brought up in class on Monday, so I'm gonna read it, and then I'll read another one, and that'll be it, and then they're gonna do better poems, it'll be fine. Okay. Oh God,
She's correct. You got this. Yeah.
Go, Luca.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Just say friend.
It's 3:19. It's too hot in the room. Yeah. Okay.
You're knitting.
I'm knitting. Okay, so this is Polyphemus's song. To you, oh you, I sing this song. For you, oh you, I cry. To you, oh you, I dedicate the losing of mine eye. I lived a life of solitude atop this peaceful isle. The ocean stretched around my cave. Oh, I could see for miles. I had none but my flock of sheep. I drank but not their milk. My brothers were the fighting sort, those beasts of different ilk. I've heard it said that people fear a creature looks like me. News that mattered not, oh you, to lone life on the sea. When I was young, a prophet said I'd lose my sight to he who fought a distant valiant war and wed Penelope. I pictured him as giant-born, comparable in size, for how could one-night infantile bring to me demise? Suffice to say, I fretted not about the future told, but yearned for one to satisfy and tended to my fold. 'Twas my mistake, I see that now, the fault, it lies on me. Size matters not to death, O you, to end life on the sea. When he appeared, that puny man, I did not know his name. Odysseus he labeled not, the soldier crowned in fame. If I had known, I might have stopped his cunning trickery. I would have spurned the wine he gave, the softness of his plea. I am remiss, I do regret, not feasting on his men, but I was never one to dine on those who language ken. My brothers, they the monsters are, I only want to be a Cyclops with his flock and you, peaceful on the sea. This no man asked to rest with me, to drink my wild wine, to cook my loved rams and sheep, and with me there to dine. Heathen I am not, O you, but neither am I host, simply unaccustomed to the open-tabled boast. And all the sailors offense took and cowered in the corn, and I they thought would long be gone afore the dawning morn. 'Twas not the case when I awoke, for as it came to be, the men were still inside my cave, my solace on the sea. My tasks I did as time wore on, while no man tried to plead, but I was tending to my flock, his begging did not heed. This no man then, in heartless ire, offered me a drink, and I, in pure exhaust, O you, did not stop to think. The wine was sweet, the liquor strong, and easy to ingest, and afore long I nodded off, my head fell to my breast. Days are long and sleep is short for shepherds such as me, and trusting we are oft to be alone here on the sea. Then it was that no man played his final fearsome trick. While I asleep, he whittled down a sliver of my stick. He pierced it straight, his aim was true, and in the dark of night, he gouged right through my slumbering lid and robbed me of sight. Awake at once, I screamed in pain, as any of us want, and from my pierced socket flowed red blood as from a font. My brothers came to catch the thief, but instead laughed at me, for no man, did I tell them, had attacked me from the sea. Sightless thus I moaned and wailed, and thus my woesome tale. For now I truly am alone, I see not ship nor sail. Before I could on passer-by rely for wider news, but now I am alone among my goats and rams and ewes. 'Twas not till I was blinded did I have the sight to see the import that you played within my lone life on the sea. To you, O you, I sing this song. For you, O you, I cry. To you, O you, I dedicate the losing of mine eye. Okay. My second poem is called I Hunger to Perfect Form. And I feel bad about it after last night, but that's okay. I hunger to perfect form. You are what you eat, so I eat nothing and become nothing and become analogous to and become unseen. I do not want to be seen. To be seen is to be subject to another's insatiability, to know, to eat everything. Death is the mere byproduct of my desire. I desire the future. I desire undoing. I desire vulnerability. I have no desires. All that I wanted I left in childhood, where I was subject to too much wanting. Silences are complicated, so I say nothing and I am, partial and I am, earthly experience and I am, standing still. Every year my New Year's resolution is to speak less and say more, and every year I fail. I talk too much when I'm scared. Breakage is the dark complement to the act of making, so I break and suggest and allude and haunt. And I leave things incomplete in my desire to be perfect, in my desire to be nothing, in my desire to be whole. Discipline your soft body, I am told, so I overcome and I articulate and I give birth to my own immensity. I have never felt so full as when I am empty of anything but lack.
Okay, hi. I'm AG. My final project for this class is a series of poems that are called the Ciphers. They take their name from Leslie Haywood's Dedication to Hunger, in which she describes the female anorexic body as a cipher or a lack or a void, but also, like, maybe many of us know that or see cipher more commonly used as a way to describe written code or encrypted messages. And so these poems are kind of exploring that duality of both the female body as being something that can be a cipher or a code, and then also the form of written code. And I'm specifically kind of exploring these things in the context of like the internet era, because I think it's a really great example of a space in which so much encoding of the female body and signifiers being placed onto the female body occurs. So yeah, that is kind of just like some context about my project. Sorry, I feel like I'm holding this too close to my mouth. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna read two of the ciphers. Okay. Cipher 2. Made an Instagram, just for fun. I got a drone, just to watch. Special movie, just for beauty. Made an avatar, with my face. Just prettier, my tits. Just bigger, my skin. Just smoother, just skinnier. She's so sexy. Want to be her. Want to eat her. That body, just watching. Incognito mode, just clicking. Anonymous, on Pornhub. Browsing, ghost self. In Panel, first time teen. Google flavors of violence. More ethical, rape fan fiction. consensual, non-consent, necrophilia on the internet. You can find it. Girl you like. Body turns on. Crying. Body turns on. Kills itself. Do the killing. Fuck my body. Lying limply. Its waist. Just with hands. I can hurt her. Make her body. Scream skinny. On the dark web. Effed up movies. True crime. Sniper POV. I want men to. Hotel room cam. I want men to. Want me. Call of Duty. Kill the bitch. I want to kill the bitch. Inside me. Want a sword. To be sexy. Eat a steak. Eat a model. Have a sword. Perfect body. Lots of sex. Lots of money. Watch the blood play. Beat of jewelry. Want to kill him. Obsess me. Understand me. Waterboarding. In solitary. Like Rihanna. Whips and chains. Ignite me. Magic pill. Make me skinny. I can't make him. Make him want me. Killing field. Sacred holy. Ripping open. All my problems. Want more followers. Without trying. Sex alone. My own body. Shave my legs. Cut them open. Don't believe it. That you want me. I seek violence. Like it's money. You're so money. Margot Robbie. Okay, Barbie. Gentle monster. Being huge. Like a stomach. Like a problem. Or a question. You can't answer. There is nothing. After revolver. After knife. Plastic surgeon. Kim K sex tape. Kylie lip kit. Make it bigger. Make it smaller. Stilettos. Sharp like knives. In the escape room. Made a cage. Just for fun. Watch the cage. Hold its bodies. Explode numbly. More erotic. Being watched. Being caught. And I watch it. In that video. All the bodies. Encoded. Snapchat nudes. Just floating. Cyberspace. Killing field. Lots of money. Watching money. On her tits. Just like Pornhub. Just like Exxon. Just like Facebook. Just like Amazon. Waist trainer. Got on Amazon. Same day delivery. Of the problem. Of the question. Of the body. Jeff Bezos. Loves a woman. Just a body. Pay later. Watch the moment. When you turn on. To the violence. Of the model. Ate her face. Just for texture. I never said that. Just a body. It was literally. Never mine. To begin with. There are men. Just watching. Sorry I didn't provide a trigger warning. I feel like this whole class should come with one, though.
Sorry.
That's my bad.
My bad.
Okay. This is Cipher 3. Look over your shoulder. Someone is following, then you are killed. Roadkill on interstate, not red but pink, and reveals pattern of lines on the victim's body, CSI Miami, on the screen late at night. The evidence, physical. The resident, evil. The process, semi-automatic. The light of the phone screen in the dark. Replay the viral clip. Pattern of spray and gore upload while fruit flies hum. The object of desire congeals and bloats. Abu Ghraib dark porn. In the leaked clip. In the 60-minute special, cancer, mad cow, disease, sickness, the object of exposure. And from what angle dripping down the walls, the vibration of jackhammer below, motel room sheets, to be decoded. Bloodborne, zoonotic, crave, Hello Kitty, Lolita, oxygenated AR-15, fingers 2 inches deep into a human heart. Carrier of disease, girls dancing to trap music. In the heart void, killing rights, first to die or last, contamination of state. Flesh of a fruit makes it thick and real. Verdict of illegal weapons possession, leather shifting on skin. Glock, maze, slick. Shifting rings of blood underneath nails, counting rings as accumulation, counting numbers on combination lock. Shower drain choking with hair, Forensic drama thriller unlocks the mutant. Invoke thick fake blood in mouth like cherry syrup. And Lois Griffin porn clips viewed on your side late at night. Declaration of loaded clip. And sovereignty of the female body. Speak on behalf of the female body, but at the center, it's not important. Not a body or system in need of decoding. Zombie, spongiform, crypt, CSI, CIA, watchful, invade, Sephora, indulgence, intelligence, spree, Pinterest, fuzzy video, resurrection, shaved, ammunitions, ration, dream girl, flat tummy, Hugh Hefner, mausoleum, collateral, OnlyFans, alcoholic, pull apart, fallen fruit, and analyze rotting flesh at the sight of flesh. Something is missing.
Thanks, AG and Luke, for the poems. I have 3 poems this evening. My name is Eel. I created these poems during my process of reading the excerpt from Hunger Artist by Maud Ellman, the chapter Granophagy? And it sort of sprang out of a moment of feeling like I desired to eat the text away, to sort of impose my presence as a transgender individual, and like through that, like perhaps like challenge the, I think sometimes arguments in these, like, you know, maybe not too historical, still pretty like contemporary and recent publications that still erase trans existence. So yeah, here's the first one. He, hag, language as expression. She neglects the public. Words, get out. Find their way through the mouth, through the ear. She forgets the act, the ear, the mouth, this confusion, the mouth, ear, exit. The act of speech. The symptom derives the delusion. Language is the same delusion. The fear of honeydew, milk, paradise. My next poem is titled The Her Is No. Soul food. Cycle of angelic. Substance of metaphor. Metaphor without food. Metaphor of translating impulses. Metaphor, rationing, parsimonious illness. The metaphor, the triumph of metaphor, comes language. Heart hay. Explore this struggle between the victims, disabled, funeral, the beginning of the book. She buys, sells, enters, shattered. A woman. This traumatized agony of hunger drives her back into the world. Their baby.
Okay, we have 10 minutes for questions, and please don't be shy. Oh, you can refer to your programs too if you're unsure about someone's name.
question's for AG. While as I was listening to your poem, I got the sense of it being almost like a verbal collage a little bit. Were you going for like a collage effect? And if so, could you talk a little bit more about like what effect you're trying to accomplish there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think definitely both of those poems and some of the other ones I'm writing for this project pull on poetic collage. I think like they're trying to replicate the feeling of like scrolling through social media and seeing like a naked woman's body next to like an image of like the US government enacting violence on like a foreign nation, and the way that those things are really jarring and very rapid fire and quick, but also are like really strange and maybe more telling about society than they seem at face value. Like I think Lois Griffin porn clip is like a really funny image, and it's also like really interesting that exists on the internet and is like a real thing. Like why? Like you know, like that's so interesting to me. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is totally pulling on collage, and I think purposely trying not to necessarily have like a very direct linear thread to kind of replicate the internet. Yeah.
I would like to say that you were absolutely successful, especially in that first poem. The like cadence or like rhythm of it, like I felt like I was doom scrolling. It was fantastic and also awful. But I know that like the form and rhythm of poetry is incredibly important, and so I guess I'm hoping that all three of you could speak to like why you chose the form and rhythm of your poetry.
Does one of you want to go first? I can be brave. I can go first.
I think I spoke about this a little bit in class, like the day or like when I did posties. But I think like I don't normally engage in erasure poetry, and I can like show it a little bit that it's quite sparse on the page, and at least for me, erasure poetry can, I think, be very amorphous, and dualistic in this way that it can carry like a violence of like taking away the words of that author, and that it can also like enact a liberation from the words of that author. So I think for me, like to engage with this particular work, the chapter from Maud Ellman, felt right because I wanted to create writing in that space of violence and liberation, because I think that is what like ultimately is underneath her writing for the women experiencing like hunger, and then also for me like as not a woman experiencing like a lot of violence recently, and craving liberation from a world that does not want trans people to exist. So yeah, for me, that's kind of why I engaged in this form.
Well, I think form at least for my second poem that I care more about, is like still kind of amorphous. Like it has a very defined form, and I'm really obsessed with symmetry and or parallelism in a way that maybe like I could branch away from. But I think form, like at least in the poems, like in context of this class, like so much focus goes into like choosing and being so careful with language that it sort of starts to feel like anorexia. So that's kind of what I was trying to, or like food control, and it's kind of trying to mimic that in word control, and then the moments when like overabundance, which it like you can't really see when I read it, but I tried to kind of mimic that in the visual form. And yeah, I had something else but I forgot. So I was also stealing. I was stealing words. I stole words. Yeah, I definitely plagiarized. I didn't cite my sources properly. I actually did, but not out loud. So I think that's kind of another thing is like the choice of like what stays and what is taken away, and like yeah, kind of choosing how do you choose what to take into your body and what to like regurgitate.
Also, I feel like agency, like choosing words is like agency of narrative. If you don't see your own like lived experience in that like narrative that you're reading, you're like, I'm real though.
Yeah,
like,
I'm definitely real.
No.
Anyway.
Oh yeah.
I needed a breather.
Wait.
What? Oh, should I answer? I was gonna answer the form.
Oh, I thought you said I need a breather.
No,
sorry.
I mean, that's why I didn't want to go first. Is all. In terms of form, for me, I feel like, well, that one was cool to read out loud. I feel like there was like a collective like afterwards. That was cool, and I think the funny thing about form is that I'm also at the same time trying to write stuff that feels like really disjointed and doesn't sound good. Which like people who have been reading my drafts this recently have been subjected to some just like kind of clunky syntax, but like yeah, I don't know. I am both trying to like achieve like that rapid clip I was talking about, and then also like try to point at how disjointed and weird all of the connections I'm trying to make are. So that is what I have to say about form. Yeah.
I'm just the cameraman, but I had to ask because I talked to Maddie when you guys first came in. I hadn't got my voice tonight for some reason, of course, but as an art major myself in college, about 50 years ago, I dropped out to take a work in computer operations, supervising people in downtown for years in big corporate offices. But I still heard the term coming up, starving artist. Is that something that any three of you can address, just in literally, that artists always struggle to sell their work and end up starving? I think of someone like Van Gogh, even ate his oil paints out of desperation and hunger. Am I interpreting that right? That artists learn to, or maybe don't learn, they die before they even sell work, like Van Gogh did.
Like, I mean, didn't Keats also, is that one of the readings that we read for this class, like they talked about Keats, like, starving? And
well, he had tuberculosis, and so he starved as a result of that. But he was, in some ways, the exemplary figure of this romantic, starving artist who cares more about art than money.
Well, as an artist, I care.
As future poets, how do you...
Well, I'm distancing myself from the poets. I'm a fiction.
Oh, now you're a fiction. So we start talking about money.
Yeah. Means that I think, like, that's a great question, and I am fearful, and I am glad that I am an artist in school, and as soon as I leave the institution, I think what will happen is I will become corporate. How much do I value my art? Like this, I think everyone tells me to be like Wallace Stevens, who was an insurance broker by day and a poet by night, and that is kind of my hope and dream. But I think it is a very real fear, for sure. But I'm also like a baby, so something with more experience.
Kafka also worked in insurance.
Yeah, like it's very reasonable. Great artist.
I will say, I think amazing art can come out of working like a random ass day job, which I think I read something about Mary Oliver that at one point in her life she was just trying to take like the worst minimum wage jobs she could find so that all she had to think about was her art. So that comes to mind too. I don't know. I don't want to starve. Like, if that answers your question. But I like writing about it.
Should I talk? Are we a panel now? I mean, I personally am afraid of a world where, like, the poetry doesn't flow. Maybe this is, like, kind of unhinged, but, like, I would prefer to be hungry and be writing poetry than to be full and numb. I do think that writing poetry and being closed off to the world are like can't overlap. And as far as like the starving artist, it's not that like personally what I believe, it's not that there's no one around to buy the work, is that artists and writers are probably for many centuries like taken advantage of and exploited and extracted for creative and intellectual labor to bolster institutions that crave profit and power. So that might be a bit of a tangent, but I think the starving artist is, they're not starving because they're an artist. They're starving as a punishment for choosing to be an artist, I believe.
It sounds like I hit a sensitive chord because I found out I could easily do work recently when they asked me to read Kindle audiobooks. They wanted someone that sounded like a morning NPR radio announcer. I held a record for calling it the NPR Stop of the Nation for years. It was a show on every day out of Washington, D.C. They invited the American public to call in, and they started calling in. They started putting me ahead of their guests to speak first because they found that I wasn't ashamed to talk, knowing that millions of Americans were listening. These are all archived. You can go back and listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Science Friday still runs, but the other 4 days have ended back in 2013. But, so I was just asked to do this recently. I was sure of luck of someone hearing my voice in a downtown restaurant.
Well, all right, can we give them a round of applause? Our next section is on mothers, kind of. But I'm going to be reading, so I'm going to pass the microphone to you, Sarah, if that's okay. Because, okay. I was using a...
7 minutes. Which, as Maddie mentioned, is themed mothers. So we'll have Stephanie Gresham, Madeline Mendiola, and Rizzo Lasagna reading from their work. Thanks.
Right.
Hello. So my final project is kind of a diary experiment. I have taken Miriam from The Edible Woman and tried to imagine what her diary pages would look like in part 2 when we don't get her first person narrative. And then I've also incorporated diary entries of my own from when I was a young mother. I mean, I'm still a young mother. And a diary from 1965 that I found in my mother's belongings when she was a freshman in college. And so I'm hoping that this project turns out to be like a conversation about motherhood and between these 3 others. For we think back through our mothers if we are women. Virginia Woolf. The title of this is called Matrophagy. Tuesday. I am telling the woman at intake about the dark purple circle that has appeared in the mirror where my face should be. I say, I can't sleep. I say, I only lie in bed and think about having to do it all again tomorrow. She says, okay, doing what? All of it, I say. When I first noticed I was disappearing, I went to lie down. It was early evening, and he was still in Lisbon. I conducted my parenting duties from the bed, yelling half-hearted orders toward the ceiling. You can eat any fruit you want, anything you can reach in the pantry. Yes, even if you have to stand on a chair. No, not if I have to help you open it. It doesn't feel like a headache or an eye problem. It doesn't have a feeling. It just looks like I'm disappearing, beginning from the top. Do you know what I mean? To the woman at intake, I am now saying the purple thing where my face should be is more like a no thing. I say I must have been ignoring the gradual vanishing because I'm embarrassed by what's happening on the inside, while on the outside everyone is saying I make it look so easy. But every time my kids touch me, I think a piece comes off. What does that mean? The woman at intake asks me something I don't want to write here. Well, do you know how everybody tells you to buy that book about what to expect when you're expecting? The woman at intake doesn't have any children. I tell her, the book compares your baby to a different food every week. From a grain of rice to a peanut butter, a peanut.
Oh no!
To a peanut, to a grapefruit, and so on. The illustrated baby in the book floats in a pastel bisection of a pink uterus. The book doesn't tell you this, but the baby will make you hate eggplant for the rest of your life. I tell her the placenta is an alien that conjures itself around a fertilized egg, invading the lining of the uterus little by little, appropriating uterine vessels and arteries until it is a fully formed organ whose sole purpose is supplying the baby with nutrients and oxygen. A placenta strategizes. The capillaries of a mature placenta, when all spread out, measure 198 miles long. That's about 7/10 as long as the Grand Canyon, or 2.5 times as long as Hadrian's Wall. I tell the woman at intake I have never seen Hadrian's Wall or the Grand Canyon. But when I was young and pregnant for the first time, I needed to see a placenta. Not in a pastel illustration like in the book, a real one. A warning popped up on the screen. The images on the internet were blurred and labeled explicit. So of course I assumed that this meant I had an absolute horror show growing inside of me. I clicked anyway and saw a deflated, roundish purple sac with dark veins poking out from a deep black center. Not horrific, but also a little horrific. I tell the woman at intake that the image searches for the other organs don't require this kind of warning. A real liver, a spleen, a colon, a real pancreas, not explicit. But the organ that has the wits to remodel uterine arteries and hijack miles of capillaries in order to feed a fetus is considered vulgar. As soon as he got home, I told my husband about the no thing. That's not the truth. Just before he arrived, I put on the costume of a woman whose face was still a face, who made people say it looked easy, who swept the crumbs, wiped the tables, Windexed the glass, bathed the kids, folded the laundry, cut the carrots into sticks, cut the apples into wedges. I took my first shower in over a week. My hair was still wet when I told him I didn't want to wake up anymore. The woman at intake asks, "So that's what brings you here?" Well, that and the spiders. The day after a black lace weaver spider's eggs hatch, she lays another set of eggs, whose only purpose is to provide nutrients for her new offspring to consume. These eggs satisfy the tiny, pale children for a few days, but then along the gossamer threads of her silk web, the mother lace weaver sends a strumming signal to begin the next phase of her maternal caregiving. Each new spider, only a few millimeters in diameter, jumps on the matriarch's back. Mother twitches and thumps in an attempt to fling them off, an act one might interpret as a panicked change of heart. Up to 180 tiny spider babies persist in their advancement as she struggles against the small army of her own making. Finally, she relents, relaxes, and presses her body into the frenzy, a leaning in against the writhing horde, allowing them to devour her alive. During my disappearing, I told the children they could do whatever they wanted, thinking what they wanted was to watch hours of cartoons and color with markers on the walls or ride the dogs. But all they did was orbit me in my bed, sticky, mostly naked, and occasionally brushing the hair away from my face to see if I was asleep or awake. That they could still see me breaks my heart a little.
Okay, so I'm gonna start by reading a piece called Echo and Narcissus that I wrote in Dr. Jonathan Walker's class. I'm only gonna read 3 sections of it because I want to read one other piece for you, but it's a contemporary retelling. Some of you might be familiar with it because I read it last year. Oh God. But in each section, the amount of mirrors in the writing diminishes by 1. Section 2, 2 mirrors. The convex fisheye at the entrance of the Walmart, surveilling and keeping vital records. We walk in hand. She snatches cheap cotton floral dresses strung awkwardly on small plastic hangers off of racks and piles them over her arm. She ushers me into a dressing room. I pull off my shorts and shirt and stand at the edge of the wall mirror, making myself as small as possible, flat-chested and shivering in my underwear as she hangs the dresses on a silver hook and examines their hems, yanking stray threads away. Raise your arms. She pulls the stiff fabric over my head, pulling stray hairs out of my ponytail. I had a dress like this. You look just like me. Me? A pause that darkens as it fills the room. The fluorescent light above flickers. Are you gaining weight? The body I was just in changes. What looked like bones 1 moment ago now looks lumpy and large. The frail girl staring back at me looks heavier. The curve on her stomach, its childish bump, is in excess. The metamorphosis is grotesque. Section 3, 1 mirror. A spring, a womb, a scale, a number, a face, a body, a flower. Section 4, no mirrors. They say the bones of the girl rest on a bed with white sheet in a room with no mirrors. They say she passed out at school. The blue socks remain empty, barring 1 protruding ankle bone and toes that rattle like loose gravel. The gulfs between sunken ribs and crater in the shoulder imply a geomorphic history. She's all skeletal and rocks. Her knob knees knock against one another like a landslide. The landscape of her is piled on top of itself. They say if you wait long enough for her to decompose, daffodils will begin to grow from her stomach and sprout beneath her sternum. Pretty flowers, reaching for white but yellow in the center. The nurses will clip them away and put them in vases on the bedside table. They say it's through her own eyes that she will die. They say she disappeared. What can we say about wasting away as love, echo as heirloom, mirror as mother? They say if you eat water for dinner and call her name, the sound will travel against her body and send yourself back to you. And I wrote this poem in a solid 5 minutes. I sure did. It's called Hospitality or He Giveth, and we had a conversation in class the other day about cosmopolitanism and hospitality and what it means to have a door or to take up the figure of the door. And for me, the door stands as like the ability to say like, this is my space and you're not allowed to enter my space if I don't want you to, and I can welcome you into my space. And the door can be like a nation, a body, a home. And I might have a woeful misunderstanding of what cosmopolitanism, because I am only a grad student. But I can't understand how we should expect everyone to be allowed to go anywhere. And I think specifically of Indigenous islanders who are having their water extracted. They should be allowed to say, you are not welcome here. And similar to what's happening in Portland with ICE busting down doors and kidnapping people, I think people should be allowed to have doors. And I think the question of power comes up for me. Like the only figure of the door that stands in place is for those in power, and for everybody else it's illusory. So this poem is titled Hospitality, or He Giveth. I chose that title because I think it's followed by and taketh away. But I started with a Derrida quote. Thank you for that, Dr. Lincoln. To take up the figure of the door, for there to be hospitality, there must be a door. But if there is a door, there is no longer hospitality. Make me a door, Daddy. Give me a nation, a home, a body, and a mouth to eat it with, if you will. A mouth I get to close. Can you be so hospitable as to please let me have a door? Silver hinges and bolt go down easy, only so solid as you want it to be, Daddy. If you give it, I won't lock you out, or me in, or you in, or me out, or knock on either side. We can sit in the kitchen like a family, and you won't have to hurt me, because you made me a door to let you in with. Daddies have doors and borders and slick sovereign tongues and cosmopolitan prongs. Wouldn't you rather use a key? It doesn't have to be like this, Daddy. Manners. Mind your manners. Is it a door or a mouth, a room, a house? It's just a little door, Daddy. Make me a door.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, we have one more.
We have one more.
Psych.
Yeah.
Psych.
She's a birthday girl.
My bad.
It's my birthday.
It's a double insult.
My name's Rizzo. If after this you want to come smoke a blunt with me, it's my birthday. This is excerpt. It's the beginning and end of a short story that I wrote for this class. And I kind of I'm going to mostly just let it speak for itself, but I kind of tried to write a story that is an anorectic story that becomes an anti-anorexic story. And it's about like the confinement of the female subject and the joys of insurrection. And it's called No Death. Ordeal. I stopped eating the day I left my fiancé. 1 year after I was put under house arrest. 1 month after my mother died. I'd already cut out meat, fish, eggs, legumes, and vegetables. During the 6 weeks that I called my mother in the hospital every day, I ate only certain fruits, honey, milk, teas, and edible flowers. I sat in beams of light as much as possible, chasing them around the house as the sun shifted, placing chairs on ever more precarious perches. I tracked the changing moods of the sky, my skin warming in the embrace. On gray days, I smoked long, light cigarettes, drank black espresso with homemade poppy tincture mixed in. Together they tasted of battery acid and churned the bile in me. By light, my emptiness was sweet. I was an increasingly ethereal seraph of gold clouds reflecting the glory of creation back upon itself. By night, the hole in me grew into a hungry pit, as if grave worms already gnawed inside. When the sun wasn't, I took baths of freezing cold and showers of blazing heat. Sometimes my skin would be so scalded it blistered and peeled. My thighs and hips split, just like the persimmons in the glass bowl, whose flesh now tasted too alive to swallow. A glow parting the clouds, and a few nasturtiums and rose petals, chewed and swallowed, were such a relief. It was always as though death were with me, in me, and then conquered in an instant. There is life in everything, and I can smell and taste it too much. Some nights soon after, I spent hours speaking to a picture of my mother that I kept in my room. Everything around me was spinning and shifting, shapes blurring together and flowing apart. Time was doing the same. I did not know how many days it had been, since I ate, since she died, since I pissed in someone else's toilet, took tea in someone else's kitchen. Memories were intruding at every turn, so I was responding to conversations I'd had with her long ago. And the future, I think, intruded also, for I saw her before me haloed in beautiful fire, walking in a world without names or borders or walls. "I am the last one you cling to," she seemed to say. "Why won't you let me go? Let yourself go. See that we are not separate. We are light. Every moment you draw closer to the light from whence you came." "I didn't come from light. I came from you," I cried. "I came from out of your body, from the darkness inside." I wept bitterly. The photograph seemed to bend gently toward me. "Before you were in me, you were in light. A voice in my head, or my own voice? Or was it her? I thought I could feel her kiss upon my cheek, though maybe it was my own hot tears. What was hers and what was mine didn't seem to matter so much now. Return to light, return to me." And then there's a section called Martyrdom, where she performs a ritual suicide in front of a crowd. And then we have Chariot. "Out of the ashes steps something. Not woman, not person, but not. It is not even correct to say that it steps. The non-self moves with the breeze, out of the city. It dances around the beautiful bodies of great trees and across the face of the waters. The not thing feels itself pulled apart into an uncountable number of tiny traces. The pieces scatter, move through and into cells, molecules, molar composites. One trace settles upon a leaf in an orchard. The fruit on the branch, the first of the year, has just reached a perfect ripeness. In a part of its not self that remains startlingly self-like, the trace yearns for the taste of this fruit. It wishes in vain for teeth to pierce the skin, for a tongue to lap up the flesh and nectar. The trace, free of all impediments and entanglements, can never enter the sweet life that dangles below it. If forever is forever, then it will remain forever outside of the sweet taste, and the sweetness will remain forever out of reach. If it had eyes to weep, it weeps. If it had a voice to cry out, it cries. But it didn't, so it doesn't. There is no escape from life." Absolution. "I wake up on the bathroom floor. I'm so weak I can barely lift my head. The dry crater in my throat pulls me upright, forces my mouth under the faucet. The glass of my window appears to be broken, and there's a brick with something attached. The sky is dark with clouds, or something else. Smoke? The light is not too bright to read by. The note on the brick says, 'We love you. Come join the party.' I look out through the broken window and I understand. It was not my body that was burning. It was the city. It was not my arm that was bleeding. It was the world. I crawl down the stairs. I struggle to reach the doorknob. I fall heavily onto the pavement and drag my body to the end of my street. My ankle monitor starts beeping its shrill alarm. With the sounds of sirens and shouting and gunshots and singing and chants that swirl about the smoke-choked sky, my little alarm is just another instrument playing along with the beautiful music. I reach the fig tree at the end of my block. I pull myself up, clutching the trunk, hugging her like she is my mother. I reach up and pluck a fruit from its branch. If there is no death, no escaping life, what better time to live than now? I can hear the sounds of many, many people in the street. Their songs are calling to me. Join us, join us. It is a beautiful day to live. It is a beautiful day to end the world. I eat a fig.
Woo!
we have time for questions.
So I noticed that. Okay, so I have a kind of complicated question, but I noticed that the theme of surrender often came up in these poems, and I noticed that both the role for women in society and also the role for women in motherhood, which is also, I guess, society, is very surrounded. It's very much centered around surrender. Like, we surrender in sex, we surrender in life, we surrender to death, I guess. And I'm wondering how we can reconceptualize womanhood as something other than surrender. Or if you have any insight into that.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I also am resistant to. I didn't feel that when writing these pieces, just because I think that Make Me Adore or like Hospitality was seething and sarcastic for me. I would say that like one of the things that we're talking about is like disorderly eating, and oftentimes I think that can be a form of resistance, even if it like even if that's the only kind of resistance that you currently have access to, right? Is like, I'm gonna withhold my body, and I would hesitate, or a drive to like regain self-control, and even if it's a scary thing, most often it's about fighting rather than surrendering, I would say.
Yeah, I'm very, very interested in this question. I feel like this is something I was thinking about a lot, because I think a lot of the narratives that we're reading and a lot of the theory we're reading have to do with this idea that like anorexia is both a literal thing and like a metaphorical logic, seem to be related to confinement and within like your subject position and trying to exercise what forms of control that are available. And so like the story I wrote is about a woman who is like a disgraced academic under house arrest for participating in like an uprising, basically. And it's sort of about, she's like in this very confined space and trying to figure out how to exercise power within her confined space, through anorexia, which then gets perceived publicly as a hunger strike, through breaking up with her fiance. But ultimately at the end, instead of destroying herself to exercise control within that subject position, she just leaves. She just accepts the consequences of leaving the remaining safety she has. So I kind of think there's like a lot of really interesting writing around like negative feminism and like negation in feminism. We read a bit for that for class, like Halberstam's Shadow Feminisms, and I think there is a quote from the movie Possession, which is what I'm writing my final on, where the male, one of the protagonists, it's about a divorce, and the man says, I'm at war with women. There is nothing stable about them. There's nothing to trust. They are dangerous. And I think that is like good to aim for.
I don't know if there's an answer to what like motherhood can do about the problem of responsibility in that way. I guess find something that you want and do it would be my answer.
It's okay if there's no answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm back in college after a lot of years, and I feel like doing the thing, whatever that thing is the only way to like push pause or stop that surrender, I guess.
Yeah.
Moss.
So I noticed sort of in all three of your works an invocation of a not self, or of like an absence or an empty void. And I was wondering how you all are conceptualizing the not self's relationship to the self. Is it like a shadow of the self? Is it a negation of the self? Is it a destruction of the self? Or is it a consumption of the self? And if it is a consumption, who's doing the consuming? Sorry, that's a lot of options.
I would say in my piece, it's definitely a consumption of the self. I guess I didn't invite my kids here so that I could say that motherhood does feel a little bit like being eaten alive, and in a lot of ways, and so I think that the way I envision this character in my diary project is feeling like whatever they had established before motherhood as a self is now being whittled away and repurposed for these other people in her life. And so I think that in the case of my piece, I would say that the non-self is maybe it's a forgetting. Actually, it might be a forgetting, and it might be a consumption, but of identity as a person besides mother.
I'll say in relation to my piece, the protagonist ending up as this disembodied, dissolute, like non-self. To me, it's like when I try to understand anorexia or self-starvation as like a method of escape. It's a method of escape from your subjectivity, which ultimately can end with like the ending of your subjectivity, which is the end of the self. And I think I wanted to kind of like question whether that is a desirable goal. And so I think that it's like the not self is what remains. Like it's almost like Homo sacer or like bare life. It's like what remains when all subjectivity is stripped away. And I think my counter argument is that we need to like make utility of our subject positions to find like better means of escape than self-negation, if we can.
I'm not sure that I have a fantastic answer for you, but I don't think that my pieces move beyond self-negation. That said, I feel like what my work is dealing with is the non-self as a projection of power. So those who are in control of the body or the person, projecting a thing that's not real, and then the desire to revoke access in order to find personhood or selfhood, be it revoking access through like disappearing, like literally withering away, or revoking access by like closing doors, setting boundaries, and I think that that's as best as I can answer your question, Moss. Wow, okay, we did it. Good job. Thank you all so much for coming. I would like to take a moment to say two things. One, happy birthday, Rizzo and Eve. Wow. And also a huge thank you to Dr. Sarah Lincoln for
It was one of the
great joys of my life. Thank you so much.
These are some words of gratitude.
I didn't have time to sign it. I'll sign it soon. Awesome. I don't know what else to say, but thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, where are we going now?
I don't know.
Thank you to the folks at Mother Foucaults for hosting
Yes.
us. We appreciate you.
You could bring any glasses or trash or whatever into the back there. We'll deal with it. Yeah, I guess we've got to package everything up. If you want to sit and do some research about where we can go, you're welcome to do that.
I'm guessing you've
Oh, I have no idea. We're closed right now. I'm not dragging, but I do have to get all my stuff.
It's like comfortable, but also also like I can tell I'm close to her, and then I'm all like my reaction was like makes me sad and I feel this way.
Better than I thought it would be.
My father's place.
I wanted to give you like that deep, you know, that
Does everybody in here like my father's place? It's a walking distance from here. We're going to my father's. You're welcome.
That was beautiful. Please keep playing. I used to play.
You could play now if you like.
Yeah,
Would you want me to see?
Sure. I'd
piano.
love to play something.
There's a piano seat here somewhere. I don't know where it went. You need the seat? It's got to be around here. It's probably pretty close.
Oh, I see it, but I'm not going to pick that up right now.
Oh, it's right here.
Yeah.
I could bring it over to you.
Let me get in the way of everybody and be really awkward. Ooh, I'm so sorry.
There's nothing like another artist that can play an instrument at the end of a presentation.
I haven't played in a really long time, so I can't see anything. Yeah. I'm just making it up.
That's how improv works. Keep going.
That was actually a piece from my album. Yeah. But I'm taking Mary's.
I don't know. It's been a long time.
Yeah, that was just a I kind of, right now, it's kind of organized with
Insected things. I don't know. Somebody else play. It's been a long time.
I practice like an hour. I have like a draft where I use notes around to see if maybe they could talk to each other a little bit more, like a dialogue. But so it might just be that it's 3 to 4 years.
professors, because then if I give you the professor's contact,
Oh, sure.
then she can share it with everybody, and I feel like that makes
It's okay, I'll put it up on the YouTube channel.
that would be awesome. Let me grab her really quickly.
As long as the snacks are full.
Are you gonna go with us?